Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbach. With the help of Hashem, broadcasting here from beautiful Elm Shade Estates in South Fallsburg, New York. We welcome you to our weekly Chumash share. We always start with Hakaras Tov to TorahAnytime.com for a platform in 187 countries, to Kol Haloshen, to our other carriers such as Torah Communications Network, and our Zoomers, our digital subscribers, Facebook, YouTube. Tonight, we went till yesterday without a sponsor for the shir. And Irving Fishbaum stepped up to the plate. Irving and Carol are from my dearest Balabatim, from the Agudas of Staten Island. They were also very, very close to my first Rebbitzin, Miriam Libby. Miriam Libby would go often to them for Shalashudas, and she was like a loving aunt to their daughter Chaya Fegi. Irving is dedicating tonight's shir in honor of his bar mitzvah parsha, Eikev, 59 years ago, and with the wish for a speedy refuah for all of Klal Yisrael. Today was Tu B'Av, so I'll add to their dedication that it should be a schus that their lovely son Mark should find a kala speedily in our days. The shir is sponsored, an interesting sponsorship. It's sponsored anonymously by one of my Talmidim with appreciation to Hashem for thwarting the mass shooting in the Margolin Hebrew Academy in Memphis. It's interesting because in Margolin Hebrew Academy, many years ago, Mim Libby and I were asked to go to Memphis as a birthday present for Sam Margolin. Sam Margolin, Olav Shalom, was a subscriber of mine, and when he became 80, they asked him what he wants for a birthday, so he says, Moshe Me'awais. So they flew us out to Memphis, and we were his birthday present. I gave many shiurim there. This sponsor also wants to be Refuah Shalema for his foot. Should have Refuah Shalema b'Sei Shachar Yisrael. The shir is also sponsored anonymously by another Talmud of mine from Rabbi Landau's shul in Flatbush, where I gave this Chumash shir for 17 years, for speedy shidduch, and a good one, for Mordechai ben Miriam and Yisrael Shlomo ben Chana Temerel. They should get their shidduch quickly and easily. And finally, the shir is also sponsored by Chaver Hadaf, Dr. Sana and Rhonda Block, for his father's yahrzeit tonight. The yahrzeit of Aaron ben Eliezer. His neshama should have an aliyah. He should have a lichtige Gan Eden, and it should be Melitz Yosher for his family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. I want to start off the shir. I didn't know this, but living with the Kruller Rebbe always tells me. So I told this word over to Kruller Rebbe, and he says, "Did you know it's a word from the Megala Amukas?" So the Kruller Rebbe told me this morning, "Did you know that it was the Megala Amukas' yahrzeit this past Monday?" So I said, "I didn't know it." So a lot of times, I end up seeing things on the Tzaddik's yahrzeit. Hashem makes it that way. The Megala Amukas, who was an extremely great man, you know how great he was that he's quoted by the Chidah. So somebody that the Chidah quotes, Megala Amukas, the meaning of it means the one who reveals deep things. So the Megala Amukos first relates a Zohar. The Zohar says, L'yirei Hashem, to those that are aware of Hashem, U'lechoshvei Shemai, and those that think of His name. So the Zohar says an interesting thing. Shekol ha'cheshbonos einoi klum, all thoughts really don't count, chutz mecheshbon Shem Hashem, except for thinking about the name of Hashem. My Rebbetzin tells me, my Rebbetzin listens to many speakers from Eretz Yisrael, and she tells me that she heard speakers saying that if you know that somebody is ill, you could think about them and picture them with the Yud Kei Vav Kei upon their head. You know, I spoke to the Kruller Rebbe. He says, I didn't hear this from my Rebbeim, neither did the Kruller Rebbe. But, okay, what could be wrong? But the Megala Amukos says that all thoughts, a person could be thinking about geometric proofs, could be thinking about chess calculations, could be thinking about the stock market. All thoughts are naught, except for thoughts of the Shem Hashem. And he says a peladika thing. He says, Cheshbain, Ches Shin Beis Vav Nun, is Bigematria 366, and Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei is exactly 366. So it's interesting that the Eitzer Aplois brings down that the Sefer Avos Torah was so moved by this idea that a person should be thinking about Hashem that he went to look to see how many times Yud Kei Vav Kei is mentioned in the Torah. Now, you know, nowadays we could just put it in a computer and it spits out the answer. The Avos Torah didn't have such a computer program. So he went by parsha to parsha, and he calculated that it says Yud Kei Vav Kei in the Torah 1,820 times. So he found a remez to this in a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. In a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, Perik Yud Beis, pasuk Lamed Aleph, it says Umin Bnei Ephraim, Esrim Elef Ushmayna Meyes Gibarei Chayil. Now, literally, this means 20,800 men of war, and mighty men, Anshe Shemus, men of a name. However, if you break it down, Esrim, Elef, and Shmayna Meyes, that's 1,820, and it says Shemus. So he says that's a remez that is 1,820 names of Hashem. Now, it happens to be that he says that in this week's Parsha, there are the most names of Hashem than any of the other 52 Parshias in the Torah. Hashem's name is mentioned in this week's Parsha 93 times. And L'maisa is, that's the meaning of Ma Hashem Alikecha Shoyel Me'imach Kiyem L'yira. What does Hashem ask? That's also in this week's Parsha. But that you should be aware of Him, to think about Hashem. Now, we have to know that one of the things that I'm saying it to myself, and I'm sure many of my listeners will agree. One of the things that we need to work on is we need to work on when we say Hashem's name to concentrate. We need to concentrate that we're saying the name of Hashem. It says, Lo yisisa Shem Hashem elikecha lashav. Don't bear Hashem's name in vain. That just doesn't mean to make a vain oath. It means don't bear Hashem's name without thinking about it. You're making an ashayotza, but you're booting up the computer. You're making a shakul. And that's why the people that give aids on how to daven, you need to get into the habit of doing this. I'm saying it to you. I wish I could say that I do this. But now that I was learning about it, I'm trying to. When you say Hashem's name, elevate your voice slightly. That will give it something of a specialness. It's brought down that way. And this reminds me of a gorgeous Tufcha Yabiyu. A gorgeous Tufcha Yabiyu. You know, it's brought down, and everybody knows this, that when you say Ashrei, you should have kavan in the pasuk of Peiseches Yodecha u'mazbiah l'chol chai ratzon. Hashem, you open your hand and you satisfy everybody's desire. If you don't have kavanah, you should say it again. So he asks a kasha. He says, is it possible that you have to have more kavanah in a stanza in Ashrei that doesn't have Hashem's name than a stanza that does Hashem's name? Soymech Hashem l'chol ha'noiflim, zoykef l'chol ha'kfufim. Do you think that you have to have kavanah in Peiseches Yedecha more than the pasuk that has Hashem's name? Shomer Hashem es kol oyavav. So the Tufka Yabiyu says a Meridik Chiddush. He says, of course you have to have kavanah in the psukim that has Hashem's name. The Chiddush is that even though Peiseches Yodecha Masbir L'chol Kai Ratzon doesn't have Hashem's name, it's equally important. But of course a pasuk that has Hashem's name, Soymech Hashem L'chol ha'noiflim, you have to have kavanah. Hashem's name? It's interesting that one of the great sfarim of thought is the Yesod V'Shorish HaAvodah. Teaches us how to do things meaningly. The foundation and the root of service. On benching, he writes how many names of Hashem is in each bracha of benching. So that you should be cognizant that in this bracha there's this amount of names of Hashem. So you should pay attention. And in this bracha, he breaks it down to give us a pause to think about Hashem. Now, the next subject, we won't spend a lot of time on it, and it's a little bit delicate, talking about going to the bathroom. Not exactly what you want to talk about, but it says, Lo yeh lecha akar v'akara. There won't be one who is sterile, or a woman that is sterile, over v'hem techad, even in your animals. So there's a Gemara B'chayris that's deep into Shas, a very odd Masechta B'chayris. There's a Gemara in B'chayris. Gemara in B'chayris says that v'lo yeh akar, you won't be sterile uvivem techa, when you behave like an animal. Meaning that if you have to go to the bathroom, you'll urinate even publicly like an animal. Because otherwise you could become sterile. The Sefer Haredim says that if a person has to go move his bowels, and he doesn't do it right away, delays it, he's busy, he's waiting for a call, he's watching the ticker, he's over the lav of leisishaktsu. You're making your body disgusting. Then he says if a person holds back urinating when you have to urinate, you're over two things, like bal teshaksu and also lo yiyah, because it could make one sterile. To show how serious this is, it's interesting. It's interesting. There's a Gemara in It's also in Bechairos. That Shmuel was giving a shir in front of Shmuel, was one of the Gedolei Adar. He was giving a shir, a complicated shir, and he had to go to the bathroom. So they spread a sheet and he urinated. And later on, the great Avua de Shmuel told Shmuel he shouldn't have done that. Because he said, you're a great man and you could use the sheet. But if you're one of your Talmidim who can't get a sheet, and he'll be embarrassed, he'll hold back and he'll become an akar. So you should have gone to the bathroom without the sheet. Indeed, the Gemara in Yevamis on Daf Samechei tells us that Rav Huna would give a very long shir. And because he had Talmidim that had to go to the bathroom and didn't go, 60 of his Talmidim became sterile. So the Trumas Hadeshin asks, how could they do that? They had to go to the bathroom, they should have left. We said it's a lav. So he says that they had such severe embarrassment to leave in the middle of the shir, that's why they didn't do it. The Tfur Shar doesn't accept that. Because of embarrassment, you don't hold back from being over on a lav. We're talking about Talmidim of Rav Huna. The Tfur Shar says instead that they were so immersed in Rav Huna's shir, it was such an engrossing shir, such a riveting shir, that they didn't realize that they had to go to the bathroom. And it shouldn't be a surprise, because that's a famous Gemara. The Gemara tells us about Rava. It's a famous Gemara in Yevamis. No, that's not in Yevamis. The Gemara Rav Huna is in Yevamis. The famous Gemara in Shabbos, that Rava was sitting on his fingers, and he was so engrossed in his learning that he was crushing his fingers and he was bleeding, and he didn't realize he was bleeding until an Apikoros said, oh, you're an Amapziza. You're a rushed nation. You don't even realize that you're bleeding. Now, why did I even mention this? I mean, I mention this because we have to know, people go on long car trips. And there's a question of stopping. Now, when you're driving, you don't want to stop. But if somebody has to go to the bathroom, you have to stop. Can't keep a person holding to go to the bathroom. And a Rebbe, a Mora, a child says, I want to go to the bathroom. No. Because you're afraid that he just wants to get out of class. But you can't take a chance about a child that has to go to the bathroom. This is what these Gemaras are teaching us. Parsha says, you're not allowed to bring an idol into your house. That means that even if you sold an idol and you got something instead of it, you can't keep that in the house either. And even if you cut the idol up, you can't keep the pieces in the house. What's so bad about that? So the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim says a very scary thing. You have to know that this is this is the way of mankind. Because you're going to keep pieces of an idol in your house, and then all of a sudden you have a change of luck. You might say, hey, you know, I had that Buddha in the house. Maybe there is something to it. You know, Rav Miller says a great thing. Rav Miller says, how come nowadays we don't have people hedging their bet and keeping idols in their house? Rav Miller says that's because even the Goyim don't do it. He says, believe me, if the Goyim that were living amongst us would really believe in idolatry, there'll be people that will privately keep an idol in their pocket and say, who knows? Maybe it helps. I'll hedge my bets. The reason why people don't do it today is because even the goyim laugh at it. In the Kinnis, we said that there was a time where the Melech thought that there was no idolatry, but really there were Yidden that was still keeping hidden in their bedrooms idols. And when inspectors from the Yidden came to check their house, it says that their doors opened and the idol was behind the two doors. So they didn't see it. They had the idol behind the two doors. When the door swung, it was behind the doors. Today, it's people that hide other things. Never forget when Rabbi Kenny Alman told me that he went to buy an air conditioner. So they asked him if they could give him the air conditioner and a television box. So he said, why would I take an air conditioner and a television box? So we need an air conditioner box for people that buy televisions that don't want people to know that they're buying televisions. So today it's other things. Even though today it's not television anymore. I heard that only people that watch television are those that are over 60. People that are younger than 60, they don't want to be bound to listen to a certain program at a certain time. They wanted to be able to watch anything at any time. They don't watch television anymore. But anyway, Simloscha loivolsa me'alecha. Your clothing in the midbar will not wear out. Now, it's important to learn this miracle, because Sukkot is coming. And there's a famous Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, why do we only commemorate the Anani HaKavod with the schach? What about all the other miracles? The well, the Amud Eish, the Be'er Shel Miriam. So the Mishnah Berurah says the first miracle was the cloud, and that opens up the discussion for all the miracles in the 40 years in the desert that are represented on Sukkot. So this is Sukkot talk. One of the miracles were that we wore the same clothing for 40 years and it didn't wear out. Now we'll see, what about the children? They need a change of size, and there were no Marcy's and Emporiums in the midbar. There were no shoe stores in the midbar. So first of all, Medrash says that the clothing were given to us. We know we brought clothing from Mitzrayim, but that wasn't sneer-sticker clothing. The clothing were given to us by Malachim. And it says that these clothing were like the shell on a snail, and it grew with the children. And we cleaned them by sticking it up to the Anani HaKavod, and the Anani HaKavod cleaned them. But the Ramban says something else. Simloscha loivolsa me'alecha. The clothing didn't wear out, because what causes clothing to wear out is the sweat of the body. And the Ramban says the mun that we ate did not create sweat. The mun was lechem abirim, bread of angels, and we didn't sweat. Nor did we sweat from the beating sun, because the Anani HaKavod protected us from the sun. Nor did we sweat from trekking through the midbar, because the anon on the bottom conveyed us, and as it says, we were like in a boat. Now, by the way, it's very good to know this from a hygienic standpoint. It's very good to know this. There's a Yerushalmi. I was not aware of this Yerushalmi. It's a very interesting Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi is a Mesechus Trumas. The Yerushalmi is on the pasuk B'zeyes apecha toicha lochem. It says that sweat that comes out from a person is a samamoves, is a dangerous thing, except for sweat of the face. You see, you play a good game of ball, and you sweat. It's good to change and to wash it off. Sweat is not good. By the way, I've mentioned this in the past, that there is a sweat that's very valuable. The Shari Tshuva in Hilchos Shabbos says that if a person sweats in honor of the Shabbos, let's say you go into a hot bathroom and you help your wife with the kids, and you're fully dressed and you're sweating, Hashem considers the sweat of preparation on Shabbos to be like tears. Very valuable to sweat in preparation of Shabbos. It's also interesting that the Gemara says in Masechtas Brachos, the Gemara says, why do the clothes of Talmidei Chachamim get worn out? After all, Talmidei Chachamim, they're not working in the marketplace. They're not trekking. They're sitting the whole day in the Beis Medrash. So why does their clothing get worn out? So the Gemara says an interesting thing. Mechufya didhu, because the shadim rub against them. So therefore the Yitzhak Plois over here says, so why didn't the clothing get worn out in the Midbar? We were in the biggest kollel in yeshiva in the history of mankind, learning Torah the Dor Deya for 40 years. The answer is the shadim couldn't get into the Anoni HaKavod. And therefore they didn't rub against us. Tell you an interesting thing. A Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam. Kesef Mishnah, by the way, was written, the Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam was written by the Rabbi Yosef Kaira, the one who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, who was such a prolific writer. So the Kesef Mishnah says that if a person makes by accident on bread a borei priha adama, he's yaitza, because the bread grows from the ground. And then he says that even if he makes a borei priya eitz, it's very likely he's yaitza. Why? Because remember we said we don't know what the eitz hadas is, and one man yama was the eitz hadas was chita. Because when does a child get knowledge? When he could eat a kazayas dog and a kazayas of grain. So you see that the chita, wheat, is considered an eitz. So you be yaitz even if you say very pre-eitz. Very interesting Kesef Mishnah. For this week's parsha, also made a bracha already. Also gives us the mitzvah of benching, v'yachalta v'savata uveirachta es Hashem Elikecha al haaretz hatoiva asher nasan lach. So you know that many times in this shir I quote from the Shachal HaTorah, who is one of the Gurei Arizal, one of the great Talmidim of the Arizal. He brings down Shamati. He says, I have heard. Maybe he heard it from his great Rebbe, from the Arizal. He doesn't say. But Shamati, Shekola mevorech al kol ma she'oichel. Whoever's careful to make a blessing on whatever they eat. Ve'enoi machnis legufay. And they don't put into their body shum dover, b'loi bracha rishayna v'achrayna. without being careful to make a bracha beforehand and a bracha afterwards. People have to be very careful. You have a salad, and your wife put in a bunch of olives for taste. You have to make on an olive appropriate, and then you have to know if you had enough olives. You have to make an olive val priyates, a bracha mein shalosh, because olives are one of the shiva minim. Right, so whoever is careful to make a bracha before and a bracha after, listen to what he says. Kishemeis eina toiloin sholten begufa. When he dies, the maggots and the worms won't touch his body. That's a big thing. You know, it says that a lot of times what causes the body to rot is rekav atzamai skina. The rot of the bones is jealousy. But this is a remarkable thing from the Shach. He says that it's hinted to in the pasuk lo niach bracha el beisecha, to leave blessing to your house. One of your houses is the grave. We lived there for a long time until Tchias Hamezim. And bracha goes el beisecha. If a person makes a good bracha, that affects a person in the grave. And it's possible, I was thinking, he doesn't say this, but I was thinking that this could be what we say in benching, Ba'amoram yilamdu aleim v'aleinu, zechus shetehei l'mishmere shalom. That our benching, which is our mitzvah d'oraisa, 3 mitzvahs d'oraisa, 1 mitzvah d'rabbanan, it should be for a protection of peace, that we should be at peace. It says that the worms cause a lot of pain to the body. And he says that that's hinted to in this pasuk. Then there'll be a blessing in the good land which is given to you. After 120, there'll be a blessing. Now I want to move on to a different subject here. We know that there are many monei hamitzvahs, many people who gave us what the 248 mitzvahs say are, and the 365 negative commandments, which comprise the Taryag mitzvahs. Of course, one of the great monei mitzvahs was the Rambam. The Rambam does not count a lav to be arrogant. He doesn't count that as a lav. But the smag, the Sefer Mitzvahs Gedolos, Ramoshe Mikutzi, he counts it. It's a pasuk in this week's parsha. Hishamer lecha pen tishkach es Hashem alikecha. Be careful lest you forget Hashem. Now, like the Rambam, the Smag did not count a lav about gaiva, about being arrogant. But then he had a dream. And in his dream, he dreamed that Hashem told him, Shochachta es ha'ikar. You're forgetting one of the main things. You're forgetting one of the main things. It says, Hishama lecha pen tishkach es Hashem alikecha. You shouldn't forget Hashem. So he got up, very shaken. He did research, and he remembered a Gemara in Sot the Daf Hey Amud Aleph. We just learned it in the Daf Yomi not so long ago, where it says, Azhara legase ruach minalan, a prohibition of arrogance. Where do we know it? It says, V'ram levavcha, your heart will be exalted, V'shachachta es Hashem Elokecha, and you'll forget Hashem. And we know that whenever it says Hishomer or pen, it's a lav. So Hishomer lecha pen tishkach es Hashem Elokecha is a lav not to forget Hashem because of arrogance. So he put it in as one of the 365 lavim. What does this mean, practically speaking? What this means is that if a person, because of money, they win a $20 million lottery. You win a $20 million lottery, I don't need anybody. I could take care of myself. Of course, that's not true. $20 million doesn't protect the person from a car accident. They spent $250,000 to go to see the Titanic. It didn't help. The owner of Santander Bank died in a hospital of Italy. He was worth $8 billion. He died choking on corona. So here's a person, he has money or he's very smart, and he thinks, he's in control. So the pasuk says, "Hishama lecha pen tishkach es Hashem Elokecha." Don't forget Hashem. Don't forget Hashem. It's interesting. The Meiri, which is not quoted by many of the poskim because they didn't have it. We unearthed the Meiri later. We found manuscripts later. That's why, for example, the famous Beis Yosef's kasha, why is there 8 days of Hanukkah? There's enough oil. It became known as the Beis Yosef's kasha. There's enough oil for 1 day. It should only be 7 days of Hanukkah. The Meiri asked that kasha. Meiri was before the Beis Yosef. But the Meiri wasn't known then. Meiri gives us a lot of wisdom. So he wrote a sefer on Midas called Sefer HaMidah Islam Meiri. So the Meiri says that gaiva, arrogance, is also from a kal v'chomer from the king. Because the Torah says about the king, levilti rum levavai me'achav. He shouldn't have his heart exalted from his brothers. So the Meiri says, well, if the king can't be exalted, and he has a reason to be exalted, I mean, he takes care of everybody. He makes rules and makes sure that the land is safe with the army. If he can't be exalted, surely nobody else can be exalted. And then he says he believes that the law of not being haughty is included in the lav of leisisna es achicha b'levavecha. Because he says the reason why we hate people is because they don't listen to our opinions. And the only reason why we think that people should listen to our opinions, or my opinion, they're not considering what I say, is only if we're haughty, if we know better than everyone else. Recently I mentioned this idea from Rav Steinman. Rav Steinman says that why do people get angry at other people? He says invariably they get angry at other people because the people don't listen to them. But he says really you should be angry at yourself. Because it says, Kol mi sheyesh bo yirah shamayim dvarav nishma. If you have fear of heaven, your words are listened to. If people aren't listening to you, so then that means you don't have fear of heaven. You should be angry at yourself. And by the way, it seems to be hand in hand, because why don't you have fear of heaven? Because you're a Baal Gaiva. You think it's up to you. Now we come to the main subject of the evening. It's 40 minutes into the share, but it's the main subject of the evening. I want to mention again our wonderful sponsors, Irving and Carol Fishbaum, in honor of Irving's 59th Bar Mitzvah Parsha, this Eikev, speedy refuah for all of Klal Yisrael, anonymously thanking Hashem for thwarting the mass shooting at the Margolin Hebrew Academy of Memphis, for the Shidduchim, quickly and easily for Mordechai ben Miriam, and good ones, and Yisrael Shlomo ben Chana Temeril, and by Sana and Randa Block, Le'imli Nishmas Aaron ben Eliezer. We had 4 sponsors this week, but we don't have a sponsor for next week. So if you would be interested in sponsoring next week, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. So in this week's parsha, it says the famous declaration, V'ata, and now, Yisrael. Ma Hashem alikecha shayol me'imach. What does Hashem ask from you? Kiyem liyira. But that you should be aware of Him. And this is the idea that Reishis Chochma Yiras Hashem. It's a scary thing. That Kol Sheyirasai Kedemes L'Chochmasai, that if one's awareness of Hashem preceded their Chochmah, then their Chochmah will thrive. But if their Chochmah came before Yira, their Chochmah won't thrive. The Tasha Rebbe in his Sefer writes that we have to know that we have to teach children awareness of Hashem, to wash their hands properly, to daven properly. Don't say, he's young, teach him learning, you'll teach him a year later when he matures. He says that Kol Sheyirasai Kedemes L'Chachmasai, that's Rabbi Akiva. The Kol Shechachmasai Kedemes L'Yirasai is Elisha ben Avuya, Reb Meir's Rebbe who went off the derech. And as the Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos, that if you have knowledge of Torah and you keep the mitzvahs, but you don't have Yira, you have all the inner keys, but you don't have the key to the outside door. So you can't get into the house. The building block of a Yiddish home is to be aware of Hashem. So on this pasuk, the Gemara in Menachos says, "V'ati Yisrael ma Hashem alikecha shayal me'imach kiyim liyira al tikrei ma elameya." Don't read it ma, but meya. That's 100 brachas every day. 100 brachas every day makes a person aware of Hashem. I said this many times at this year, that Rav Miller would explain this by saying, there used to be a clown with a big red nose called Bozo the Clown. Rav Miller mentioned Bozo. And he said if a person says Bozo 100 times during the day, by the time he goes to sleep, he's going to dream about Bozo. He's going to be Bozo. The idea is if we say with kavanah, with raising our voice when we say Hashem's name, Baruch Atah Hashem, 100 times, Sha'akol Niyah B'dvaro, Hazones HaKol, HaMekadesh Es HaShabbos, Roifei Kobaso Mafli Lasais, Burn the Fashis Rabbi Yismichas Rein, and Alamichya Shalei Asani Gai, Shemei Tfilo, Hamavarech Asama Yisrael B'Shalom. If we say Hashem's name 100 times, we become a Yarei Shemayim. This is very important. So important that there is an opinion, a very a very accepted opinion. There's one opinion in the very accepted Sefer Hamanik. Sefer Hamanik is Sefer Minhagim. The Sefer Hamanik says that the institution of Meir Brachas was made by Moshe Rabbeinu. Indeed, it's the opinion of the Chidah. It's the opinion of the Migal HaMukos, that Moshe Rabbeinu instituted the Meir Brachas, and indeed there are those that hold that 100 blessings is one of the Taigang mitzvahs. But we'll talk more about that later. There's a strong remez that 100 brachas generates Yiras Hashem. It's a pasuk. Ki chen yivarech gever yirei Hashem. So should be blessed the man who is God-fearing. But yivarech means also to bless. Ki chen is 100. Ki is chaf yud is 30, and chen is 70. If a person is going to make a bracha, he's going to become a Yirei Hashem if he does it 100 times. How important this is. There's a Das HaKenim. The Das HaKenim Bali Taisvus says that in the Mishkan there was Ma'as Adonim. There were 100 sockets. Now the beams fit into the sockets. So the 100 sockets were the foundation of the Mishkan. Says the Das HaKenim, Adonim is the same letters as Adonoyim. And it refers to the 100 times we say Adonai in the 100 blessings. And that is the sockets, the foundation of a Jewish home. You want to make your home into a mikdash? If you're careful with the 100 brachas, your home will become holy. Not only will your home become holy, but your home will become blessed. Uvechol makom asher azkeres shemi. Any place where you mention my name, ovayelecho veirachticha, I will come and I will bless you. Making Hashem's blessings with Hashem's names brings bracha to our home. It brings holiness to our home. It makes our home a mikdash. And it brings blessing. So it's interesting. There's an obvious question that I've had. You know, we have a bracha, a Masechta, delicious Masechta in the beginning of Shas. Everybody looks forward to learning Masechta's brachas. It talks all about brachas. But this din of Meir Brachas is not in Masechtas Brachas, entire Masechtas Brachas, from the beginning till the end. It's not in Masechtas Brachas. 63 blot Masechtas Brachas doesn't have the din of 100 blessings. You know where you have to wait till? You have to wait all the way till Seder Kachim, almost to the end of Shas, to Masechtas Menachos. It tells us this drash of Ati Yisrael Ma Hashem Alikecha Shayel Miyamach Yira al Tikrei Ma Elameya. So the Mefarshim ask, actually it's a place. He asks, why did they wait till Masechtas Menachos? This is very basic. It should be a Masechtas Brachas. So you have to know that Rab Chaim Paltiel and the Shachal HaTorah and the Rishon D'Rokeach all say that if a person makes 100 brachas, it's considered as if you bring karbanos. Remember, carbon is to bring us close to Hashem. Person that makes 100 brachas properly gets darn close to Hashem. And that's, here again, Adam ki yakriv mikem karban. Mikem, mem, chaf, mem is 100. Mem is 40, chaf is 20, is 60, mem is 40, is 100. Says the Shach al Torah, Adam ki Yaakov mikem. If a person comes close with mikem with 100, karban. That's why it's in Mesechus Menachos, because it's like a meal offering. It's like a carbon. You know, there's all kinds of things that people say. It's a Tosfos, Taisim and Menachos, interesting Taisis. It doesn't say Meya, it says Ma, Mem Hey. How does Ma become Meya? Vati Yisrael Ma, Hashem Elikecha Shoyel Me'imach Kiyim Liyira. So it's interesting. Taisis says if the word Shoyel is written Shin Vav Aleph Lamed with a Vav, then there are 100 letters in that pasuk. And if you read Ma with like Meya, because the pasuk only had 99 letters, but if Ma is read Meya, that extra Aleph makes it 100 letters. That teaches us also Ma in Atbash, you know, where Aleph equals Taf and Beis equals Shin. Well, Mem equals Yud and Hey equals Sadi. Yud and Sadi is also 100. That's how it becomes 100. But let me tell you something now. I'm going to tell you a personal chiddush. This is a chiddush of mine, but I think it's a good one. The most accepted opinion is that the 100 blessings were instituted by David HaMelech. Chazal say that the generals came to David HaMelech and told him that every day there were 100 casualties at the battlefield. 100 Yiddish body bags, lo aleinu. So David HaMelech got up and instituted 100 brachas to protect the soldiers at the battlefield, and it's based on the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Noam David ben Yishai," so speaks David ben Yishai, "Unu'uma gever hukam ol." Ol is b'gematria 100. He instituted 100 blessings, and then they stopped dying at that battlefield. That's why it's considered a very big protection. Many people spoke about having tremendous kavanah in the Me'ah Brachas during Corona, because it's a special protection against death. So I wanted to say a chiddush. We all know about the six-sided Star of David. It's called the Magen David. What's the symbolism of the six-sided Star of David? The six-sided Star of David stands for Echad L'Mala, Ve'echad L'Malta, Ve'abaruch Saretz. The Hashem is one above, below, and the four directions. Right? That's the six sides. And that's what it says. It's the Magen David that when they did battle, that they should know that not doing battle on their own, and not with their skill, not with their prowess. Like it says, Eila v'rechev, Eila v'asusim. These come with a chariot, these come with horses. V'anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu nazkir. And we mention Hashem's names. That's the Magen David. So I was thinking, Magen, what's the gematria of Magen? The gematria of Magen is 93. Mem is 40, Gimel is 3, and Nun is 50. That's 93. Then you have the six sides. That's 99. But then you have the body of the star. So that's 100. So you'll say, Rabbi Weiss, what does the body of the star represent? Oh, there's a famous Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, when you say Hashem Echad, and you think that Hashem is one over the four directions, and above and below, Don't forget to appoint him over yourself. The body of the star is you. This direction, that direction, under, over, and on me. So the 6 directions in the body of the star, that's 7 and 93, that's 100. The shield is the 100 blessings. That's the shield. You know, I thought about this idea about the body of the star as being a separate to the 6 sides. And then I found that it's brought down in the Sifrei Kabbalah that the 6-sided star of David plus the body of the star represents the 7 spheres. The 7 spheres of Chesed, Gvura, Tferes, Netzach, Hoid, Yesod, and Malchus, with the body of the star being the sphere of Yesod. So we see that there's such an idea that we count the body of the star. Now, it comes out that 100 brachas is a very big thing. It really protects us. So there's a fascinating Shibbolei Leket. Fascinating. Shibbolei Leket on Hilchos Tefillah. Shibbolei Leket says that the Geonim sent to the people to adopt 100 blessings. And they sent back Emes v'Yatziv v'Nochan. They sent back the message. You got to hear this. It's really fascinating that they sent back Emes v'Yatziv v'Nochan v'Kayim v'Yoshev v'Nem v'Aviv v'Chaviv v'Nechbad v'Noam v'Noira v'Adar v'Sukan v'Mekubal v'Toy v'Yofa Adover Hazeh. It's going on 100 brachas because there's 15 vavs. 15 times 6 is 90. And had davar hazeh is 2 A's is 100. It's saying how beautiful it is, this protection of 100 blessings. Fascinating, Shibbolei Leket. Now, because the 100 blessings is so important to bring to a person to Yiras Hashem and to give a person personal protection and to make the house holy and to make the house blessed. So during the week, it's almost a no-brainer to get 100 blessings. No-brainer. You have 3 Shemoneh Esreis with 19 brachas. That's already 57. You have the bracha of tzitzis, the 2 of tefillin, so that's 3. You have Netilas Yadayim, Asher Yotzer, and Al-Kai Neshama, that's another 3, that's 6. You have the 3 Berachas HaTorah, that's 9. You have the 15 Berachas HaShachar, that's 24. Baruch Shomer and Yishtabach is 6. I counted it wrong. Let's go again. Tzitzis and Tefillin, that's 3. Netilas Yadayim, Asher Yotzer, and Al-Kai Neshama, that's 3, that's 6. Berachas HaTorah is 9. The 15 of Berachas HaShachar is 24. The 2 of Baruch Shomer and Yishtabach is 6. It's 26. And the 8 of Berachas Kriya Shema of Shachris and Mariv brings you to 34. 34 plus 57 is 91, which is Amen. You only need 9 more. Stipler Gaon says a person makes a Asher Yotzer approximately every 3 hours. That brings you at least halfway. And then, of course, you're going to eat. So you have no problem with bracha rishonos and bracha achronos to get another 4 or 5 brachas. You're 100 brachas every day is easy shmizi. Shabbos is a whole different story. Shabbos, instead of having 57, with the 4 Shemoneh Esreis of 7 brachas, it's only 28. You have 3 benchings, so that's another 18. But that's only 46. So you have tzitzis, and we could count a separate bracha on your talis. All right, so that's 2. The Til Sidayim Ashiyatz and Lakai Neshama, that's 3. So that's 5. Birchas HaTorah is 8. Birchas HaShachar is 15, that's 23. Baruch She'amar Yishtabach is 2, that's 25. Kriya Shema in the morning and the night is 8, so that's 33. 33 plus 46 only gives you 79. You're 21 blessings short. So then, correct. So you have 79. You have 2 brachas in Kiddush in the night. That gives you 81. You have a Bayer Priagafen in Kiddush in the day. That's 82. Now you're 18 short. So the Mishnah Berurah says that you should listen to the brachas before and after the Torah and the birchas of Haftarah and answer Amen, and that counts as blessings. So that already gets you there, because you have all the aliyahs and the mafter and the birchas Haftarah. It's also brought down that in Enkel Elokeinu, when you say Baruch Elokeinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, those also count. Yet, there were many Gedolim that didn't want to take shortcuts. So they manufactured more brachas. You know, there's different people that have a minig that when they make Kiddush Friday night, they make a bracha on the besamim. That's an extra bracha. There are many people, Rabelsky says, if you sleep Shabbos afternoon for 2 hours, and you put back on your tzitzis, you should make another bracha. So that's another bracha. You drink something before davening, you make a nefashis, that's another 2 brachas. Rav Klunemis, this is interesting. You know, some people, they make Kiddush, and then they have cake before they eat the meal. He said Rav Klunemis did that in order to manufacture more brachas. They say that the Satmar Rebbe would grab a bunch of grapes before he left for Mincha to get another 2 brachas. It's a famous story with the Baba Rebbe that he said that when he comes back from davening, he's going to want to have some biscuits. And then after came home from Mincha, he said he doesn't need the biscuits. So the host was scared that maybe the Baba Rebbe didn't like his hashgacha. So he smiled, he says, Chas v'shalom, I needed 2 more brachas. I was going to make a mezainis al mechir, but they gave me an aliyah in shul, so I got the 2 brachas. They say over that Rav Chaim would count the brachas. He knew he needed 18, so he would count the brachas. It could be, I spoke to the Skolya Rebbe about this, he says, why not? It could be that we could count Havdalah. That would be a lot of extra brachas. The Bar Priagafen, the Bar Minei B'Sam, Bar Mari'esh, the Hamavdil. Because that belongs to Shabbos. We even know that when maybe we could even count Malav Malka, which would be another 6 blessings. Because we know we say Migdal in the Malav Malka because it still belongs to Shabbos. Now, what about women? Women who don't daven 3 times a day, they're not getting 100 brachas. So I will tell you that on Yom Kippur it's impossible to get Mea brachas. Because in Yom Kippur you can't eat. So I would bring Besamim to Rav Moshe. So he wanted to make sure that sometimes people brought him smelling salts. So when I brought him Besamim, he would ask me, is it gute? Is it good ones? I would say yes, he would make a bracha. So I would ask him, we can't get 100 brachas. Is there an Indian to get as close as possible to 100 blessings? So he said yes. Even if you don't make it, it's an Indian to get as close as possible. So the same thing would be true of women. Even if they can't get 100, they should get as close as possible. In the merit of us being more conscious of our blessings, Megal Amukis says the real cheshbon is the cheshbon of Hashem. That's why cheshbon and Shem Havaya is the same gematria. Hashem should indeed shower us with blessings, gesund, nachas, nezias chen, menuchas hanefesh, and everything wonderful. Have a good night and a good Shabbos.